Hello wrestling fans, the Wrestling Wizard here and welcome to another video. And in this video we're going to look at some of the scariest and most terrifying acts in WWE history. Now this is just my personal picks. I've gone for 10 picks in this video, but I want you, the wrestling fans, to get down in the comment section, share your thoughts and opinions on some of these acts and also your top scariest acts in WWE history. Now I've gone all the way back to the 80s and of course right up to the present day where there's a certain terrifying faction running riot in WWE. Now let's kick things off with my first pick, and I've got to go for the Big Red Machine in Kane. All the way back to 1997, Bad Blood in your house, and I think it's very appropriate the fact that we got Bad Blood returning as a PLE very, very soon. But what a debut, what a backstory. The Undertaker's long-lost brother was very much alive and, of course, wanted revenge on The Undertaker. Now, the backstory, really, really briefly, was The Undertaker actually burnt down their family home and actually killed his parents in the process. And Undertaker thought that Kane was also dead as well, that his brother died, but he didn't. He returned as what I can only describe as a badly burnt, tormented demon. And for me, the original version of Kane was the most terrifying. Honestly, this version gave you nightmares. The mask, the presentation, the theme, the way you could control the flames was just badass. Now, initially in his run as Kane, he was this physical presence, this absolute weapon who obviously very clearly had psychological issues, but as he learned to speak, as he got his voice box back, or control of it I suppose if you like, he then turned into this psychotic devil. Now of course eventually Kane was unmasked, and this is where I think we saw the most unhinged and most unpredictable and most vicious version of Kane. Along with his theme Slow Chemical, it was just an awesome character. He went as far as to electrocuting Shane McMahon's bollocks. I mean, does it get any more sinister than that? Now I could go on with a list forever of crimes that Kane has committed throughout the years, but what a character, one of the most iconic characters in WWE history, and I really wanted to start off with him. Now we've gone from one of the most villainous characters of all time in WWE to Dink the Clown. And I know what you're thinking, and I know how you probably remember Dink the Clown, if you remember him back to the early 90s. You probably remember him as a lovable prankster type clown, because that's what WWE eventually made him. But there was a point in time where they were sort of on the money with Dink the Clown. Now of course Matt Bourne was the person behind the original Dink the Clown, and this version of Dink the Clown was terrifying. He was an evil clown who cheated to win via dirty tactics, and he didn't give a damn about what anybody thought. And you've got to think, around that time clowns were actually terrifying. When you think back to Stephen King's It, I mean, that is pretty horrifying. And to see a clown on TV, on a WWE TV screen, horrified a lot of people and a lot of fans. And he was pretty sadistic as well. Every time he saw a child in attendance, he would purposely scare them, which I thought was a really nice touch. He had this really creepy, terrifying laugh. Now, unfortunately, over time, WWE sort of messed up the presentation of Dink the Clown, and he wasn't this menacing, horrifying, evil, horror movie style clown. He just turned into a bit of a joke, and sadly that's how people will remember him. But I wanted him on the list because there was a point in time where he was pretty terrifying. Now next up is one of my favourite superstars of all time, and you cannot have this list without including Mankind, one of Mick Foley's darker alter egos. I mean, never trust a man who literally lives and hangs out in a boiler room. This was a tortured soul. This was a psychological maniac, a former pianist who had his fingers broken and just enjoyed inflicting pain on people. He was sick, twisted, wore a terrifying leather mask, and very mentally unstable. He suffered from schizophrenia, and it was very, very clear to see. This was a man that would literally rip his hair out during matches while screaming mummy. He had a terrifying finisher in the mandible claw. You would not want to be involved in that, and that would then later in WWE be passed on to a very special superstar who we'll cover in a moment. He would go on to have legendary feuds with The Undertaker, amongst others, and Mankind will forever be one of the scariest and creepiest and psychologically deranged characters of all time. Now, moving on to my next pick in Jake the Snake Roberts. Now, you probably think, he's not scary. He wasn't scary, and yes, physically, visually, he wasn't intimidating or scary, but he just had this aura about him, this presence. He was an absolute mastermind at storytelling and an in-ring psychological genius. He spoke really softly when he was cutting his promos, and he had this aura, this ability to just draw and captivate the audience. Go back and watch any Jake the Snake promo. If you haven't ever seen Jake the Snake Roberts before, go and see it, because he was an absolute genius at his craft, and a lot of superstars up to this present day could draw inspiration from him. It did help the fact that, of course, he had his pet snake in Damien, a humongous python, and on occasions he would use other snakes to terrify his opponents. And there were certain segments, certain moments in WWE that genuinely were a bit terrifying. When he attacked Macho Man Randy Savage with a cobra, and you heard children and women in the crowd literally screaming. It was quite a shocking moment at the time, something that I don't think we'll ever see again in WWE. People getting bitten by snakes. I think health and safety might go out the window a little bit there, but moments, to be honest, I will never forget. And Jake the Snake Roberts is forever one of my favourite superstars of all time. I've got multiple Mattel figures, some of my favourite figures I've got in my collection of WWE. Now, this next pick is highly predictable, but how could I not have The Undertaker on this list? Arguably would be top of this list if we had it in any order, but WWE was never the same from 1990 and the debut of The Undertaker at Survivor Series. A person that just captivated WWE on so many levels. Originally a zombie-like character who would literally put his opponents in body bags. I mean, how sadistic is that? And then, of course, he would evolve into this sort of supernatural cult leader who could shoot electricity out of his fingers and, of course, come back from the dead after being buried alive. An iconic supernatural character who could incorporate the horror gimmick into WWE and make it work. And not only could he utilize that, he also had various ways of reinventing himself as well, when of course he evolved into the American Badass before reverting back to the Deadman gimmick. And absolutely no one is going to argue that The Undertaker shouldn't be on this list. I had the pleasure of actually seeing The Undertaker live in person in 2015 opposing the Wyatt family, and that would be a moment that I will never forget. They say you get goosebumps when The Undertaker comes out, and I can confirm you definitely get goosebumps when The Undertaker comes out. He's just got this presence you can't explain. He's left a legacy behind that would never, in my personal opinion, be matched. A streak at WrestleMania that was just godlike. I can't see anybody lasting that long within WWE at that level. Next up, inhaling from the bottomless pit, the Boogyman. Now, nobody is going to remember the Boogyman for his wrestling ability, but as a character, you're never going to forget the Boogyman. Of course, Martin Wright portraying the Boogyman, who felt to me like a cross between the Star Wars' Darth Maul and the Candyman. And visually, this guy would haunt you. Bizarre, yes, but creepy as heck. He would literally give me nightmares. Bizarre is probably one of the words that I would use to describe the Boogeyman. He would bash this alarm clock over his head, recite nursery rhymes to scare his opponents, eat worms, get his opponents to eat worms, which is in itself a little bit weird, isn't it? And let's not forget, he would eat birthmarks off human beings. Poor old Gillian Hall. I still feel sorry for her to this day. But the Boogeyman was a really, really creepy character. Yes, he wasn't the greatest wrestler in the world. Did he need to be? No. Now, I was hesitant to put this next one on my list, but I'm going to put it on my list anyway. In Papa Shango. Mainly because I like WWE characters that are a little bit weird. And Papa Shango, although he didn't set the world alight, and on numerous occasions he did get voted in on one of the worst gimmicks of all time, but I just think this, again, had so much potential, like Dink the Clown. It could have gone somewhere. Of course, Charles Wright portrayed Papa Shango amongst other various gimmicks that didn't work out for him, but what actually ended up working out for him was his portrayal of the Godfather. He's basically a pimp who had an escorting service, and that was where he got most over. But I actually, in a weird way, found Papa Shango quite a captivating character. I found him quite a compelling character. This voodoo witch doctor who had a skull painted on him, who carried a skull to the ring, who had these mysterious powers. I mean, if you can use your voodoo powers to make people physically sick, like he did with Ultimate Warrior, it's got to go on the list, right? Sadly, though, I think people will always remember Papa Shango for his botch moment, of course, at WrestleMania 8, in the match between Hulk Hogan and Sid Justice. Papa Shango was supposed to break up that pin and cause a disqualification for Sid Justice, but he didn't make it to the ring in time. He took about 20 years to get to the ring, and sadly people will remember Papa Shango for that. But I thought visually it was a really intimidating character, and a character, again, that you never forget, even though it didn't set the world alight. Now, if you followed this channel for a while, I think you knew this one was coming. It, of course, the Fiend Bray Wyatt. My favourite character of all time within WWE. Bray Wyatt, the absolute mastermind, the creative genius, created something that will always be remembered. The Fiend, an iconic character that literally felt like it was pulled from a horror movie. The creative layers to this were on another level. Bray Wyatt had actually predicted The Fiend years ago in the Man in the Woods promo in WWE Ghost Stories. He foreshadowed The Fiend way in advance until, of course, 2019. And, of course, we saw The Fiend come to life. And what was genius about this is Bray Wyatt had created this imaginary Firefly funhouse in his mind with various puppets, which signified previous characters from his past. And one of the characters, a new character that would be revealed, would be The Fiend. But it didn't just stay in Bray Wyatt's genius creative mind. It actually then came to life. It was brought to life and appeared on our TV screens. And The Fiend had a very clear motive. He wanted to hurt people that had wronged him in the past. He would also attack legends along the way too. And of course he adopted Mankind, aka Mick Foley's finishing maneuver in the Mandible Claw. An absolute badass character who'd been able to blend horror into WWE. He literally felt like a character that was shot out of a horror movie, and it just worked. The mask was just incredible. Everything about this character was spot on. The presentation, the visuals, the entrance theme, absolutely badass, and forever will be one of my favourite characters of all time. Now we're nearing the end here, only 2 more to go, and it's a bit of a random one, and I think reflecting on it, I think I might have changed my opinion if I did this again, but I'm going to put him down anyway, in Gangrel. Of course, a member of the Brood. He wasn't part of the Brood for that long, if I remember, alongside Edge and Christian. And this was around the late 90s, I believe. But it was like this vampire cult of a faction. I just remember as a kid watching Gangrel and actually being pretty captivated by him. I thought he was pretty badass, and typically vampire gimmicks don't really work very well within the WWE landscape, but Gangrel did. I love the way he used to rise from the ground through this ring of fire as he sipped blood out of a goblet and then like spat it at the stairs. He would intimidate his opponents by literally creating these blood baths and pouring blood all over them. He had those terrifying teeth, which actually made him look like an actual real life vampire. And I just thought he was pretty menacing. I always look forward to a Gangrel entrance, a Gangrel performance. It was just sad that he didn't last that long, really, in actual fact, within WWE. and his partnership alongside Edge and Christian as part of the Brood, again, didn't last that long either. I think there was so much potential there with Gangrel, but for me, I always remember him. So that brings us on to my final pick, and I think this was going to be a fairly obvious one, bringing it up to, of course, the present day in 2024. How could I not include the Wyatt 6? June the 17th, 2024 will forever be the start, the point where Bo Dallas, aka Uncle Howdy, honoured the legacy of his brother Bray Wyatt, honoured the legacy of his creative masterpiece in the Firefly Funhouse and bringing it to life. Of course, Bo Dallas portraying Uncle Howdy, Dexter Loomis portraying Mercy the Buzzard, Eric Rowan portraying Ramblin' Rabbit, Joe Gacy portraying Huskus the Pig Boy, and of course Nikki Cross representing Sister Abigail. Of course, that's 5 people. I'm sure it's going to be 6. We'll have to wait and see what comes next. But what a presentation, what a visual, and what a debut as well. Absolutely wrecking havoc, creating an absolute massacre within the backstage staff within WWE. This is just the start for the Wyatt 6. The sky's the limit. What a tribute. But not only that, I feel this is just a start creatively when it comes to Bo Dallas and what you can do next with the Wyatt 6. The masks are absolutely spot on. The little tributes. Got numerous videos on this channel going through the various Easter eggs, and hats off to Bray Wyatt, of course, along the way. The most perfect way to honour the legacy of Bray Wyatt, but at the same time, in the most terrifying way. This faction is literally going to give kids nightmares. You can literally hear kids screaming at live WWE events, which actually is a little bit sick when you put it like that, but you get where I'm going with this. It fits the theme, and it certainly belongs a place in this top 10. In my personal opinion. Now, what is your personal opinion when it comes to the top scariest acts of all time? Get down in the comments section, share your favourites, and maybe some of these your favourite superstars of all time along the way as well. There are a few others that I probably should mention off the top of my head. You got Kamala, Viscera. I always thought he was a little bit terrifying. Kevin Thorne as well. Also Mordecai. I thought he was pretty badass and had loads of potential. And weirdly, another one that comes to my mind is Nails, for some reason. Do you remember Nails? If you don't, look him up, go and watch him. There's just something quite creepy about him. Thank you so much for watching the video. As always, it'd be very much appreciated if you could like the video, share the video, and even better, subscribe if you're new. We'll catch you in the next one.